Unfortunately, it is worse than it sounds, and it sounds pretty bad. What the Maduro regime is attempting to do is create, obfuscate, is confuse. They're chopping 5 zeros off the currency. That new currency will then be based on the value of the petro being this infamous cryptocurrency that they've tried to institute that has no international support and has been considered a scam. And the value of the petro is valued by the market price of Venezuelan basket of oil. So if that sounds confusing, it is, because that is what they're trying to do. They're trying to have a major devaluation of the currency, take away all the savings of the middle class, and multiply supposedly the minimum wage 30 times by September, and that the government will pay for this in the first 3 months. That cannot happen. If you believe that that is going to happen, then I have a bridge to sell you.
Is this the spasm that creates a revolution there, or that ends in Maduro's departure one way or another?
Well, as a very well-respected Colombian general told me, there is no doubt in my mind Maduro falls in the next 6 months. However, I've been saying that for 5 years. Mm-hmm. So one would think this is surely now, this the last straw. But we've seen quite a few last straws in this Venezuelan debacle.
Why does the military still support him? Why does anybody still support him? Or is this, am I exaggerating when I say the Somalia of Latin America? Does it just descend into warlords and people who control different parts of the city and the country?
I would hope that it certainly does not descend into that. There's two very large, porous borders with Colombia and Brazil. And then what we've discussed before many a time, Michelle, these are the largest oil reserves in the world.
Right, right.
There's 300 billion barrels of oil in that country.
How bad is the border crisis? Is it comparable to what we talked about with Syria?
The border crisis is shocking. The border crisis is a real humanitarian crisis. The IMF is trying to help, the Colombians are helping, the Brazilians are helping, but both countries are being overwhelmed by the numbers of people showing up.
Which sort of begs the question, is there a point at which Brazil and Colombia and other countries in Latin America step in and say enough is enough now? And can they do that?
Colombia has not done so. Brazil has attempted to do so, and they momentarily closed the border, and there was a court order reopening that border. But it's not just those two countries. There are Venezuelans throughout Latin America. Believe it or not, there are thousands and thousands of Venezuelans that have walked from Venezuela to Argentina. That's a 3,000-mile walk with children. So images that we have just never seen in Latin America before is unfortunately something we're seeing now.
We should worry less about them, I suppose, but what are the wealthy doing with their money, and what are the wealthy doing day by day to get by? And are they increasing their security? What's happening?
The security was increased dramatically about 7 or 8 years ago. The upper echelons of socioeconomic life in Venezuela have always been very rich. This country's been producing oil since 1914. Venezuela was, for many years, the per capita richest country in the Americas. The Concorde used to fly direct from Paris to Caracas.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't
And now
know that.
people don't have food. So the economic elite that are not connected to this regime have left. They're in New York, they're in Madrid, they're in Paris, they're in Spain, and in Latin American countries.
How does this play out from an investment standpoint? We had the news today about a deal with ConocoPhillips, Goldman Sachs on the wrong side of a bond trade. Is there a bigger concern here in terms of the impact for Wall Street and businesses outside of Venezuela?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that one needs to take into account. There's $62 billion worth of bonds between PDVSA, the oil company, and Venezuela that are not being paid. So far, the accrued since those defaults occurred is now about $5 billion. Will be another 3 and change by the end of the year. So now the Venezuelan debt to the marketplace is about $70 billion. And that sounds, okay, who is this marketplace? This marketplace is U.S. retail and U.S. pension funds. That's who owns this. Mutual funds own these bonds. So that's that component. And then there's a component for oil prices, right? This is a country that used to produce 3.5 million barrels of oil 20 years ago and is now producing 1.1, 1.2 million barrels. So, you know, oil price is going to be impacted, bondholders being impacted. This saga still has a lot of
just when we
chapters
think
to
it can't get worse, it does.